Hello, everybody. Welcome to Marlicia's Meanderings. I am Marlicia, also known as Marlicia Muses, and this is
I'm Talia, also known as Talia Nerds Out.
and her a link to her channel will be in the description box below the video. We are here to do the authors are weird tag, and I have to look and see what the information is because Talia gave it to me this morning. Let's see here. It's by she saw the tag on Bonnie Nicole Wright's channel, okay? And it says, just how weird am I as an author? Sometimes authors do things that are just plain weird. No. Time to find out what kind of weird things I do.
I can think immediately off the top of my head some things you did when I was in high school.
Well, I can think of some things that both of us do.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Take the fifth. Okay, make sure you check out Emma Bennett, author. She has a great writing channel and a full playlist of other writers who have done this tag. Okay, so we will get right to it. There are 10 tags. So let's get started. Do you have bizarre internet searches? If so, what is the weirdest one? Bizarre internet searches. I'm not sure I would recognize it as bizarre if it was. I'm not sure. Bizarre.
Well, I mean, that could be things like what a body looks like after death. Or, now I'm not sure how many of those kind of things that you...
I don't. I think more looking at like certain kinds of words, names, going to name generators and trying to find names that sound right. They have to sound right. I mean, they have to look like they are in the genre I'm writing, which is usually fantasy. And so I'll go to name generators, or I'll just go and look at random things. I mean, Talia got something in the mail one time, and they misspelled the name. I said, "That's a name for my character. You can't have it." So
my name, but
no, it was a misshapen form of your name. It was not your name. That was not the name we gave you at birth. So I took that name for a character. Also, I'll go through baby books, and I have a set idea of, and I know that's a book, but I would.
And these aren't particularly bizarre. These are actually things that are fairly normal.
Yeah, to look for a specific. Like I said, I don't know if I would recognize it as bizarre because I've been doing it for so long, and the people that I was writing with, they were writing the same genres and they were doing the same kind of things. So I had no yardstick as to what was weird or bizarre. I think looking at how a dead body looks or something like that, the temperature of a dead body after so many hours, or rigor mortis fades after so many hours or whatever, that's kind of bizarre. But if you're writing a mystery or a crime, that's not bizarre.
But it is something that you might not particularly want people to look at your search history.
Oh, poisons. When I started writing, some of my stuff was when I started dabbling was I guess you'd call it thriller, mystery, espionage, that kind of stuff. So I would look up poisons. I would not want anybody to see my searches for that period of time because, yeah, that might not look well. How about you?
I can't think of particularly weird ones for when I've written my original stuff. I think I've probably had some odder ones for some of the fan fiction stuff, probably the things that have to do with more the superhero genre, those kind of things. Might be some things when I was doing some Stargate stuff as well. But again, because you're dealing with a kind of a crime type thing, you might get things about death and sometimes even simply occupations I would have absolutely no interest in pursuing, but because it might work into something that I'm writing, I need to look into that. Or if I want to see how I kind of visualize a little bit more how someone's mutant ability might work.
Right.
But usually, like I said, most of my odd things I think are more in the fan fiction realm, simply because for my original stuff I tend to write fantasy, so I'm the one who makes up the stuff.
And that's what I find too. A lot of the stuff that I write that's fantasy, I make my own worlds, my own world building. So if I say it's this way, it's this way, as long as I'm consistent.
Now, on the flip side, if I might be looking up things that have to do with herbs or older medicine, simply because I have a physician character and I have to have a good idea of what they might have generally known in a more medieval type setting.
And I also have, I actually have books on that as well, where I've done, so, like I was, and rocks, the properties that people at any given time might have ascribed to certain kind of gems or rocks or minerals.
Well, what's interesting is when you deal with people's beliefs, like if an herb looked like X, then it would help with Y.
Right.
But that, like I said, that doesn't feel like it's particularly weird. Most of my things, I'm like, I don't really necessarily want people to know that I'm searching these things, do fall more in the fan fiction area.
Right.
Simply because it's a different topic matter.
Right. Okay. I think we exhausted that one.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, number 2. Do you write people you know and dislike into your story as villains or dumb people to kill off? I've been tempted. I don't know that I actually have. Well, I've been angry at people or upset at people and written them heavily disguised, usually in poetry or flash fiction. Nothing I want to publish. It's more therapeutic than anything else. But I don't usually. No, you know what? I can't.
What?
That's a fib.
What?
The first time I started writing, the first story with Sarah and all that kind of stuff, I was in the cast of Fiddler on the Roof. Just a very,
it was a base production.
It was a Air Force base production, and I had friends there, and they all, or a good portion of them, made it into my story, in various forms. Some were villains, some were heroes, and some had interesting quirks that made it into the story as well. To the point where I actually called one of them and said, "Do you mind this? And what about this, this, and this?" And the person said, "Sure, okay, fine." So, yeah, but I got away from that after a while.
Yeah, I don't think that I don't purposely write people into my story. I'm more influenced by other works of fiction. This was actually more early on, when I was in high school, where I might look at like a type, so like a Gambit, and that's Gambit from X-Men type character, or Han Solo type, which might seem like it's the same, but it really isn't. There's different aspects, different things that motivate them. So I might find them influenced by types, Batman type, a Spock type, but that starting point was not really ever. Those characters have gone far beyond that basic idea, and like I said, that was early on. That was when I was in high school,
right?
So.
And I think it happens no matter what your age when you start writing, because I started out with poetry. When I started into prose, I looked at other people for character traits and archetypes and things like that, and both Talia and I have characters that were based on the same characters at the same time, even though at that time we weren't writing together. And so
we just had a lot of the same influences.
We had a lot of the same influences at Gambit and Spock and Han Solo and things like that would pop up in different forms. And the way I wrote the character differed from the way she wrote her
Which,
characters.
of course, makes sense, especially at that point in time when there was a definite maturity gap because of the fact that I was still in high school.
Right.
So also my characters lacked a certain level of depth that
we didn't have the experience yet.
Right. They had to grow with me because I've had many of these characters since then. So I've watched them grow and mature as I've grown and matured.
And the thing is, that's a very obvious growth and maturity, but my characters also, because we took some of these characters from my story, my secondary story.
I guess we should probably clarify. We write a story together. It's a shared story. I'm going to move the camera a little bit closer. And so we've been writing together since, I think it was my sophomore year of college. That would have been 2010. When she lost her previous shared story partner, I offered myself up as an option. And so we've been writing together going on 15 years.
Yeah.
So, yes, the same story. No, we'll never finish it.
No, and it's got all kinds of, we have alternate universes, we have the straight timeline, we have all kinds of stuff.
Within the past couple years, we completely upended our plans. Like everything that we had been planning on for like 13 years at that point, we turned everything on its head because
my character decided it didn't want to do that anymore.
But yeah, so
and she'd been not liking that anyway. So.
No, and I could feel that it was something that was coming on, and eventually I was like, I think this is where we need to be going with the character. It was very hard, especially for you, because you actually liked the.
But she was pushing.
Yeah, and she doesn't mean I was pushing. She means that the character was on my side.
The character was pushing. Yes. The authors are weird.
The character was on my side.
Okay.
But yes, I've never written anyone into a story that I don't like.
Or to kill them off.
Yeah.
You understand, with my Christian background, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that. It feels like murder. I can't. If I put someone in a story with the intention of killing them off, that's like saying you want them dead.
And also, to put someone in a story, directly in a story where it's definitely them, it's hampers creativity, because then I'm not listening to I'm putting on the character what they're going to do versus feeling what the character wants to do and adjusting accordingly. It muffles the character's voice. It muzzles them.
It does. It muzzles them. And you don't. They have no freedom then. I mean, people kind of roll their eyes and say, when authors say, "Oh, the character said this," they do. They do.
The funny thing is, Austen would talk that way,
mm-hmm.
and so would Christie.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, Jane Austen, Agatha Christie.
Mm-hmm. And we talk about that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's go on to 3. Does personal hygiene sometimes come second to right? No. No. It might get pushed back a little
mm-hmm.
bit, but no. Sleep would.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in full writing mode, my husband complained because I would get up early and go to bed late. I'd be teaching school for the girls, mm-hmm. and then I would be up at all hours writing. And it's like, you're never away from the
when
computer.
You're on a writing tear, you're on a writing tear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything kind of, the world fades away.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's really hard to, I always say that writing's a jealous mistress.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to be serious about writing and have a lot of other hobbies, in my opinion.
And I think that, and I thought about this before, and then I heard, I think her name is Lucky Lady Linda.
mm-hmm.
Linda?
Mm-hmm.
Poor Linda, her ears are going to be burning. I'm always talking about her. She had mentioned this, and this is something I had been thinking of as well. She had lost in the fire some of her short stories that she was going to
mm-hmm.
put in a book, and I've been thinking about putting my flash fiction and 500 Club things separate from my novel into a book,
mm-hmm.
and see, and maybe so I can keep them forever in something
mm-hmm.
that's a little more permanent than a computer file.
Mm-hmm.
I have to see which ones can get cleaned up and whether I'm going to stick to the 500 Club or if it's just
mm-hmm.
going to be flash fiction
mm-hmm.
in general. But I don't know where I was going with that.
That was his personal hygiene one.
Okay.
Oh, you already answered this one. Do you go on baby name? I'm sorry, you're the one lady.
Do you go on baby name websites to help you name your characters? I go on naming sites. I usually go to baby books. There's something about physically turning the pages and going down the columns. I think I have gone on baby name websites, especially if they're ethnic. Like, okay, I want a name that means this, but I don't want it in English. I want mm-hmm. it, from, I don't know, wherever. Or I'll just look at a name. I want a name that means this, and I'll go down all the different languages. And yeah, I'll go random search engines for that. Baby name search engines. Yes, I will. Just depends on my mood in terms of if I can't get a name on my own, I'll go to something like that.
For my personal writing, where I'm actually going to be creating names, so not the fan fiction genre, which I really don't do anymore. But when in my own work, no, I don't go down baby name websites. I very much just go off of what feels right for the character. A lot of times I'll just be sitting there trying to feel the character's. No, that sounds so wacky.
No, that's
feel
true,
the character's name. Listen for the character's name.
No, it comes out in what they do, and sometimes what they are. I have a healer, a female healer, and her name came out of a book, but I knew what I wanted. I knew what she wanted. I just didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and looked for it. The same thing happens for her future husband. He's a protector.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got a name.
Although both of them did find in baby name books.
But that's what I'm saying. They told me what it was, and I didn't know what.
Yeah.
I didn't want the English.
Right.
And so, and I don't stick to one language.
No, you don't.
Mm-hmm. It's just wherever I find it. Okay. Number 5. Do you have a list of actors and actresses that would play your characters if there were adaptations made?
You used to.
When I first started, I tried that. It didn't work out very well. I had to drop it. It was too constricting.
And I never have.
It was too constricting. I needed at first to visualize who they were, and after a while, it just didn't work. Trying to find the main character of the story that Talia and I are working on together was impossible because of the impossible standards of who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, I can't find the people I want as actors and actresses. Also, nowadays with the World Wide Web and all the news and everything, I know too much about that people,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't necessarily, it conflicts with what I have in mind for the character and what the character is telling me about herself.
Well, and also part of it, and this comes up, I think, when you're dealing with anything that would be a translation of something. Like, if I am never going to find in a movie a live action version where Batman looks and sounds the way I think he should, or Nightwing,
Mm-hmm.
or any of these characters. It's going to be very hard because, now granted it's a visual medium, but I know what they should look like. I know what they should sound like.
I agree.
And so even more so for characters that I have created and I've written, even though I might not have a full visual picture in my head, I would know it's not them.
No, I get that because, like, when the two characters, before we did our shakeup,
Mm-hmm.
when they were together, I can only see them in silhouette.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to see your character, I wouldn't necessarily be able to recognize him unless he was in silhouette.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have specific idea in my head, and it's like, no, it's not that person. No, it's not that
Mm-hmm.
person. One of my other characters, the only way I could visualize him was in full motorcycle gear. And I'm not talking about like the gangs and stuff that you see in the 50s. I'm talking about the leather and the helmet.
And that's a different story.
Yeah, it's a different story. Yeah, no, we don't have motorcycles in our story. And one of those really sleek motorcycles and stuff. And that's what I saw him, sometimes with his helmet hanging, looking out.
Mm-hmm.
Clara drew a picture of that.
Mm-hmm.
Looking out in the distance. I never saw his face. I just knew his feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I quickly abandoned, well, quickly to me, not to Talia maybe, because I think it went a couple of years when I was doing the other story.
Yeah.
It's just an exercise in futility to do that.
Because for a while, I feel like you had me draw a couple of your characters, try to get them.
And none of them hit.
No, it's never going to hit. And at that point, some of them were still quite early in their development.
Yeah, some of them were.
Because it was before we were writing together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, have you ever stared at a stranger because they look like one of your characters? No, but I've kind of cocked an ear if I heard a turn of phrase or a accent, or even if they just a feel. Okay, I might not want to have that particular person, but they exude aura is not the right word. An essence. I don't know. I'm getting kind of new aging. That's not what I want to do. They just feel similar to what the character does,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd say, oh, okay, maybe now I know that XYZ character has to be a bigger person with this kind of a build. Not that they look like that person, but you know what? That kind of fits.
Something about the body type or the general feel of that person.
Yeah.
I've never had this experience.
Well, I'm a little more, in some ways, what's the word? I guess we always call me more whimsical, but I'm not sure that's it. But
more visual?
I was going to say that, but I wasn't sure you would agree.
Because to go back to a topic we've gone over and over again ad nauseum on the knitting podcast is the way you see color and the way I do the patterns. The patterns are almost more analytical.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that kind of bleeds into the writing as well. I don't know.
Well, I think it's a different way of doing things.
Mhm.
You know, we are different.
Because I also don't see scenery.
Yeah, and I see it, but I see it more than she does, but not like Tolkien or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so are you finished with that one?
Yes.
Okay. Number... I thought I missed
7.
one. Did I not miss one?
You did not miss. Yeah, no, you did not miss one.
Okay. 7. Do you talk to yourself to help? Yes. Everywhere. Okay, yes, I do. I will talk to myself. I will talk to her. We will play out.
And now, since we do write in the same room
Mm-hmm.
together, I'll stop and be like, hey, do you mind if I do? Because we will write our characters and then we'll hand the story back to each other after we finished our section, and then we'll write in response with our
Yeah,
the other person.
The cardinal rule: you don't speak for another person's character,
Mm-hmm.
and you rarely move the other person's character.
And if you're going to do so,
Mm-hmm.
you touch base with the other author and are like, hey, I need to adjust this because that's not how my character would react in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think your character is doing this. Is it okay if I move them to this position so my character can react accordingly?
And usually that's okay. Occasionally we have to hem and haw back and
Mm-hmm.
forth because of what I'm trying to get across. And sometimes I like one of us, because we were doing it on a once a week schedule. Now it's whenever it gets done because
Yeah.
of her illness and my fatigue and stuff like that. So
we did it once a week at one point.
Yeah. Well, no one I did it. We were doing like almost.
I just, because I was working full time. Are you sure it wasn't once a month?
It was no more than once a month.
Okay, because I can't see it with me working full time where I would have been able to do it once a week.
I think sometimes you would go on a tear at night,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes I give it to her. It would surprise me. She'd give it to me the next day.
You know, also, I think that they've gotten a lot longer.
Oh yeah, they have. But my friend with the first shared story,
Mm-hmm.
we had multiple storylines within the story, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we would have, okay, this one's done, and then I'm writing on the other one, she's writing on that one, and we'd switch off. So we have 2 or 3 sections going. But
we don't tend to do that with ours.
No. But my point is that with that long period of time,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to write and say, okay, I know something's going to happen. I'm going to write as if this is happening. And then you have to adjust when they say, no, this is what I wanted to do, where I see my characters going. And then we adjust.
Now, because we're writing more consistently now, I don't think the long stretches will be quite the same. Like, I don't think we'll go quite as long a period of time.
Right.
But,
Okay.
yes, I also talk to myself to work through scenes. Also, I've got certain characters that have very definite voices. Very distinctive voices. And so I need to talk in their voice in order to... And by voice, I don't mean like the sound of their voice as in like he has a deep voice, she has a high voice. I mean...
It's diction.
Diction and tone and that kind of thing. And I have to have it right for specific characters in order for the other character to respond in turn in their specific voice.
You have a lot of dialect.
I have a lot of dialect with my characters. Partially because one character isn't even technically human. He's Tolkien will have elves. He's of a different race.
Well, I've got a couple that are like that as well.
But they seem to be more integrated to that society.
I have dropped a lot of the formality that some of them have had, especially with this particular character.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them don't use contractions.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, when I write them in my novel that I talked about on an earlier podcast that I had accepted, the one particular character never uses contractions. And I'd have to really make sure, no contractions.
Whereas I think because the one particular character, one of the ones that has one of the strongest dialects, he wasn't socialized.
Right.
So...
And he's very young. Oh, no, you're talking about the other one.
Yeah, the other one. The older of the two.
Right.
He wasn't socialized because he doesn't come from a social society. So he doesn't have the influence of other people changing his speech patterns. Also, he's stubborn. He's probably never going to change his speech patterns exactly. And
have
then
to learn a little bit. But
yeah, and then the other one, it's just
yeah, it is what it is. I have one character that doesn't impact this story. He's in another story that is actually with two of the characters that come into this story, and he's not even human, and he talks in a mixture of pictures and telepathy and one kind of like Groot, okay, but not okay because this was made before Groot.
Well, before you knew
before
about
I was
Groot.
aware of Groot, yeah. So years and years and years ago, even before we started writing. So yeah.
Now, because of this, there are points where I actually will have to put the writing aside or move on to a different section if I can't think in that character's voice.
Right.
Because that person, it takes a little bit more effort to go into that character's voice. And like I said, I have two characters particularly that I really have to think in their voice. I have a third one, but usually his is fairly easy to get into.
He's snide.
Yes, he is. But if I have one of my more normal characters, while they do have patterns with it, in which they talk. First of all, they're brothers, so they talk similarly, even though not exactly the same. But they have more normal.
Yeah.
It's probably closer to my own personal baseline, so it's easier to write. But yeah, that's part of why I talk to myself while working through scenes.
Always have. Okay, number 8. While writing, do you make the expressions your characters are making? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so.
I might.
I've never seen myself do it. That doesn't mean I don't do it.
I mean, I know that sometimes I've done...
Oh, I've done actions.
Or whatever. So I would imagine if I've done actions, I might have done expressions. But again, I'm not a very visual writer.
Now,
so
I do know that if I'm answering, like, when early on, when they were having their, their introductions and stuff, and my character would repeat back, and if she was being annoyed, she would be, well, and I would do, So, yeah, I guess, yes. I guess the answer to that is yes.
And my answer is I'm not completely sure, but I would imagine I do so simply because I do other movements.
Right. Oh, I do it. Yeah, I do other movements. Number 9?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you ever practice answering interview questions? No.
No, never.
No. Nope. I'm not sure I want anybody getting a hold of my stuff if it ever gets published. So
I am writing for me. I have no ambitions. This is mostly just a fun exercise in playing with characters. I'm not a plot-driven writer. I'm a character-driven writer.
We both are. We're both character-driven.
So it means I never get very far in any sort of story. I finished the one I wrote in high school, but it really merely was just a jumping-off point to create the characters that I have now. Honestly, it's more of a backstory than anything else.
Now it is, yeah.
Yeah. Because the shared story I've been working on for so much longer, and the characters have really bloomed in the shared story beyond what they ever were. Now, part of it is because I'm an adult writing it versus...
And part of it because we discuss it sometimes in persona character.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we've actually gone into actual arguments.
No, discussions.
When we both got irritated for our characters,
Discussions.
that's an argument.
Discussions. Discussions.
I would say it was an argument, and actually, funny enough, I kind of won that argument years later.
Very much, but only because she decided it was so.
Yes, but I think it was funny because I got irritated for my character that she wasn't with at that time, and that character was never seen as an option. I kept getting irritated. The backstory
is that she was when we started, she was the only one of my characters at first who came in, and she had 4 guys.
Yes,
4 guys, and so she made not made the rounds literally, but
her character
potentially which one could be.
And she never touched on the one guy who was interested in her, who without any qualms, she went for the person who was only I guess.
Well, he actively didn't want to, so she backed off. She backed off in terms of she stopped talking to me about it, but I guess he didn't like the fact that she was ignoring him.
I think that's probably what it was, because he's
and yes, these are people. We are talking about real people.
I think that's probably right, Mom. He didn't like that she was ignoring him. Then he got interested.
Yes.
But
then eventually because she held that particular character of hers, the one that liked her to begin with, so far up because her background made it so she thought everybody was better than her.
Although she considered his brother.
She did. I don't know why.
Because he was just like everyone except him.
But they would have been wrong. I mean, that was just wrong. I think both of them felt it.
She considered the one who absolutely should never be in a romantic relationship.
Yes.
Before the one she's actively in a relationship now.
Yes. Well, apparently she finally realized that the one she's with now is no longer on the pedestal.
I was right.
This is the
I won the argument years later.
No, you didn't. She just decided she didn't want to do it anymore. There's a difference. Okay. Yes, this is what authors do. It's weird.
Especially when you write together.
Yes. Okay.
I won.
Do you ever... No. Do you have a soundtrack and or play? Yes.
You do.
You did for a while, too.
Okay, I have music that I write to now because I... have to because we write in the same room and you have things going at the same time and you don't use headphones.
No, but for a while we had the Celtic music.
Okay, yeah, we did have the Celtic music. It was very much with specific things. I think you were more keyed into the music aspect than I was.
Well, the problem with that is that for me, I kind of try not to do it as much anymore because what happens with me is that I will attach certain music to certain characters and then it interferes with me writing the other characters. When I was writing my novel, I did listen to instrumental, but mostly it was instrumental guitar. It had nothing to do with the characters, had no, what do you call it? No
I think I made this
connotations.
A little strong this time.
Huh?
I think I made this a little strong this time.
Oh, no connotations or anything like that. It was just this beautiful, soft acoustic guitar, instrumental. And so that was very nice to write to. And then we did the Celtic for a while, but that became distracting after a while because I would see things in my head that weren't supposed to be put down on the paper, so it made it difficult. I don't have as much unless it's something really innocuous and nondescript.
Because, like I said, now I have to have music because of the way where I'm writing and the way it's set up. But it's a writing list on Amazon. It's a writing playlist someone already had set up, and it's got violin music, which
that would work.
I really enjoy violin music. It's actually, if it's violin, flutes, that kind of thing, that's my preference. Yeah, but that's also makes sense because I like Celtic music too. So
see, I like violins and guitars, flutes, and sometimes piano, depending on how it is done. If it's soft and kind of in the background. So yeah, that's the last tag. I think this has gone around for a while, but I will tag people in the description box below this video.
I was trying to think of any other things that we do in our writing.
I was trying to think of that as well. Oh, I can say right away. When my friend, and I'm going to call her, well, I'm going to call her, I'll just call her my friend. My friend, she came over from out overseas, and we had been writing to another shared story at first, and then we made our own that this one now spun off of, we call it the story that doesn't exist anymore. But
well, especially since the one character is no longer with your character, got really jealous of the other story that she used to be in before she changes the character.
Yes,
that makes sense. Don't worry.
It really does make sense. It's all anyway, but we'd go to the mall and we'd look at things. There was a store there that had like weapons, and I don't mean like guns. I mean like medieval type weapons, like swords and knives and all that kind of stuff. We're like, well, this person would have this and this, and the guy's looking at us like we're nuts because we are two adults. This was about 20 years ago, so we're talking at least in our 30s, maybe our 40s even. And we're like, well, this would be for this character. We pick it up like, well, this might be too heavy for this character. And then we would move from that store to another store that had all these dolls. Like, this might look like so and so, and this, and we're going through the mall like that, going through a mall pre-COVID, so it's still got
I was
people.
still in high school.
She was still in high school, and we're going through and just
being generally embarrassing.
We weren't embarrassed in the least. It was fun.
I think that, and I honestly don't remember how much I was embarrassed as a high schooler.
I don't think you really were, and I think the people once
I was actually fairly involved in your writing stuff, not because I was writing with you. Because I hadn't even done my thing where I slid in and pretended to, didn't let you know I was writing it.
Yeah.
I hadn't done that yet. You were just sharing stuff with me. So
Yeah.
I was keyed into your stuff.
So once we explained what we were doing, the shopkeepers kind of got a kick out of it, and just let us kind of do what we did. We look at stones. Like she went to the Smithsonian after she came here, and she because we were outside of DC about 2 hours, I guess, and she went to the Smithsonian, and she sent me an agate or something. I don't remember. I think it's upstairs in my bedroom, because that was that one of my characters' stone, and so it was kind of, yeah, we do. That's only one thing that pops up in my head that we used to do, all the time. Just kind of.
Another thing that we do is we build stories in the far future, which we've never really written down. We've written down notes about it, but we know what's going to happen 20, 30, 40 years in the future for these characters.
Not just in their universe, but in an alternative timeline.
Yes, we have alternative timelines for them, which I guess is probably one of the weirder things, that we have alternative timelines for them.
We like our characters.
Let's see, I felt like I had something else that I wanted to mention. The alternate timelines, the having things way in the future. We revisit storylines, which we've talked. It's partially like writing it. It's almost like when people would share folk tales or fairy tales, where they would just keep telling them without writing them. We've done that for years with certain storylines, where we remember them because we've spoken them so many times to each other.
And I think there's a lot more depth to these characters than some of the others that we have, because there's so many nuances in them. There's so many layers.
That's what I actually wanted to talk about. We had the one question about, do you write people into your story? Not purposefully.
No, not purposefully.
And what I want to say about that is that each character has an aspect of myself, but I think characters do pull aspects of other people that I know.
They have to.
And I don't register it until later. Now, that might be fictional characters, but also I will look later and go like, oh, I can see where this person's, this characteristic of this person might have influenced this part of this character. Right. But the character is a composite of so many different things that I've experienced through other people, through other mediums, deeply within myself, that they are still their own creation.
Right.
And then the other thing that I want to mention is, you've mentioned that you can tell when I've been reading something different, where another author's style might creep in.
Yeah, because I've had that happen where somebody would say to me, oh, that reads like XYZ. And I'm like, oh, I was reading that. And it's not intentional. I'm not plagiarizing. No. It's just that I was influenced. I'm hoping that now, as I get more eclectic and stuff like that, it kind of
evens out a little bit.
And I know people also say you have Christian messages in there. Well, yes, that's my...
Well, I mean, if that is a part of your worldview, that you can't help but have that influence your story. But yeah, I think those are the other things that I wanted to bring up. The fact that because these characters have ended up being more multifaceted, probably because they aren't based solely on any one person. I do feel like most creative writers don't pick one person now and go like, you're one for one this person. And actually, I think that people who believe people like Austen would pick people in their lives and that was just that character, they do that author a disservice, because that author has and I know Austen in particular used to mention, like, she had this further story in her head where she'd be like, well, Darcy wouldn't like this if Lizzie's picture was available for everyone to see. And she had just gone to a picture gallery and she'd be like, oh yeah, I knew that was a color that Jane would like, because I just knew it would look good on her, and this seems like a color she'd like. Honestly, so it's a building of the world, and that world it's not going to be constrained by someone else's real life existence if you're writing true fiction.
All right, now honestly, you can tell we could talk about this forever. But this is getting long, so we're going to shut this down now. Yeah. I'm going to tag several people, but I do want to tag right now Lady Linda, because I know she's writing. And I will tag everybody else on the bottom. If I don't tag you, please feel free to do this tag. The authors are weird tag. We'd love to hear from you. Tag me if you do it. Tag Talia if you do it.
And I'll have to send this to you so you have the questions.
And we thank you for joining us for our meanderings here. And we wish you a very wonderful day. God bless.
You forgot that you're the one in charge